Hey, how you doing, everybody? I am Fruit Bats, and this is 100 Ways, a puzzle game from a small indie developer called Sunlight Games, and I really was looking forward to liking this game. It's got a really interesting premise. The goal is essentially to get a marble from the beginning of the level to a flag at the end of the level. And there's all sorts of different items that can help you out. There are teleporters that move you around to a different part of the level. There are springs that you could use to boost you over holes. There are speed boosters that could give your marble more speed to get you over some rough terrain. And in addition, there are holes that you could fall into that you have to watch out for. On levels, there are fans that will blow you around and change directions. There are cranes that will pick you up and put you down. And you have to figure out how to use your items to navigate around all of these obstacles and get to the flags at the end. But unfortunately, it fell apart for me in a few areas. For starters, the UI is not very captivating to me. There's a few windows that look a little bit antiquated. Everything looks a little bit dated here, and it's just not really selling it for me as a game that has the level of polish that I was hoping it would have. As you get to later levels in the game, every time you go to this level selection screen, it automatically starts you at the far left, so you finish your level, you've got to scroll to the right to get to another level that you want to do. It just feels like the level of polish just wasn't there. In addition, the sound design in it isn't that spectacular. We have a magnet that we encounter here, and yeah, I don't really care for the way that sounds, or the sound that it makes as we go through tubes. And then on top of all of this, we have this robot that appears at the beginning of every level that sounds like this, and usually doesn't say much of anything at all. In the first 10 levels, which are the tutorial, he gives you some guidance, but in most of the later levels, it's just largely pointless, and just noise and another screen I have to click through before I could start the level. In addition, there's some bugs in the game that also was somewhat frustrating. For instance, there were some times I would try to move objects around, and I couldn't click on it. It was like the object was stuck there forever, so I would have to go back out to the level selection screen and start over, replace all the objects, click on another one, it wouldn't be able to move, I'd have to start over again, click on another one, it wouldn't move. This was a problem I kept having, and it was frustrating to run into. Other bugs I would run into, I would go through a teleporter and get a ball floating in midair. That was weird. We would be going through a level and I get a ball stuck in a tube. What are you doing? Get out of there! What? Then we'd be going down another area and a ball would get stuck in a fan, I guess because I was going too quickly. Largely, the physics in this game break down in some areas. Particularly, you could see here in one of the early levels, level 17, I use 2 springs to launch over these 2 holes, and I make a mistake a little bit later in the level, but that's fine. We'll readjust what we're doing there and we go through again. This time, with the springs in the exact same position, the ball gets launched off the edge. So that's okay, I'll just move it back, and that's fine. And then this time it's okay. And then the second time I go through with the same setup, and this time it misses the fan. What is this? So now I feel like at this point, it's only level 17, I feel like I can't trust the physics anymore. I have to try each design a couple of times to make sure it's not just the physics that's the problem. Like, look at this on this one. We have a flipper here. The first time we shoot it, it falls. The second time we shoot it, it makes it, then we shoot it again, and it falls through the second to the last hole, then we shoot it again, and now it goes through the last one, then we shoot it again, and it's the second to last one again. And then at the end of all of that, it turns out the solution is pretty straightforward and simple, but this is level 20. I feel like a fifth of the way into the game, the solution to a puzzle shouldn't be that. And that's ultimately the problem that I have with the game, is that beyond the bugs, beyond the UI, the puzzle design for me just isn't that captivating. For instance, the cranes, which I thought was going to be such a cool feature, were largely kind of pointless. It would be fun maybe if I could place them myself, but keep in mind all of these cranes are already on the level. They're just largely moving me down a linear path that doesn't really vary. They could just not be there and the path could be straight and there would be no difference. And the physics on them feels a little bit weird as well, because the ball maintains momentum after it gets picked up. So the ball gets picked up, gets put down, and then the ball keeps going with the momentum that it has, which feels weird to me, and they just feel so pointless. It's such a fun object that felt like it became so pointless. To be fair, there are some levels where the cranes were pretty fun. There was this level with the cranes all in a square, and you had to figure out how the cranes were going to move based on the momentum of the ball and figure out which way to approach it and how to come out of it. And that was pretty fun, but I just think it would be more fun if these cranes were something that I could place myself instead of just being a largely not that difficult to get around obstacle in an otherwise linear level. And fans have the same exact problem. The fans, if I could place them and move around corners with them, would be interesting, but they're an obstacle. All of these fans were on the level already. This is just watching the marble move through a big square by itself until it gets to the end where there's the one and only one object I placed to solve the level. This is just fans. It may as well just be a line to the very end of the level. There's no purpose to have the fans blow here other than to just, spend time watching them. Or here, this entire puzzle was just merely putting springs in front of the fans I didn't want to use, and not putting springs in the front of the fans I did want to use. If I had to think about positioning of the fans, or rotating the fans, or doing anything with the fans, maybe it would be a little bit more of a puzzle, but with the fans just being a method of making the ball change direction, it's not really that challenging. Oops, that one was too far away, so now we have to move it slightly, and then we get to go through the whole thing again. We watch these fans just blow around the marble, watch them blow around the marble. This could just be a straight line directly to the very end. There's no challenge here. And then tubes. Tubes are the worst obstacle in my mind. There's some level that are just going down tubes. Then we go down longer tubes, and this is the actual speed here. I don't want to burden you with it, so I'm going to speed it up now, but we're going down tubes. We go down straight tubes, a full level of going through straight tubes. Then we go down really curvy tubes that take forever to get through. And then, oops, we made a mistake, so we go back to the beginning, we go through the tubes again. And then it's just tubes and more tubes, and we're going through tubes, and there's tubes that we have to go through, and we wind our way through tubes. This is level 64, 64 out of 100, and it's just going through tubes. This doesn't feel like a puzzle to me. And I think that's what ultimately disappointed me so much about this game, because the title, 100 Ways, speaks to this suggestion that there's going to be a variety of different ways to solve these levels, that there's going to be these ways to think outside the box and come up with a clever solution, and you could use teleporters to do it this way, or use springs to do it that way. But it isn't. It's largely just linear levels. I mean, look at these. This was level 65 and 66. And remember, these tubes are slow. They're slow to get through. So in a game where you want to just throw things on the map and see what happens, the thrill of experimentation is gone because you have to sit and wait to watch your ball roll through these tubes. And then at the end of the day, the puzzles were just a little bit too easy for me. Like, look at this. This is level 43, and the entire level is just using speed boosters to get across obstacles and then tubes that turn us around. The first thing we learn when we get speed boosters is that they're for getting past obstacles. So being level 43, this feels like it should be level 12. And then there's a jump at the end, so then we use a spring to get over it. And then level 49, it's just putting down springs to jump over holes. It's completely straightforward. There's no challenge to it. And then some pointless cranes at the end to move you around to make it look a little bit more visually captivating. And then we get to level 50, halfway through the game, and it's exactly the same as level 43 was. You're just using boosters to get over obstacles in a completely linear path. And then some of the puzzles feel like not even puzzles at all. At level 30, we're using launchers to get over barricades. And then 7 levels later, we're laying down our launchers, and then we're hopping over gaps between each of the islands instead of hopping over walls this time. Then we get to level 46, and now we're hopping over both holes and walls, but it's the same thing. And every level just feels so linear with just one solution. Except there were some levels that seemed interesting, but I felt like I cheated them a little bit. They looked more complicated, the map was bigger, but I was able to just skip huge chunks of the level. Like, look at this one, they introduce the magnet with the robot, and I look up and I see the magnet and I say, oh, okay, I wonder how this is going to interact with my ball, what I'm going to do to get around it. But then as I think more, I realize I have a solution that could just bypass that magnet completely. Did I break the level, or was that intended? And then later, same thing, the robot introduces the grill, and then I'm able to come up with a solution that bypasses it completely. That feels not intended. I end up coming up with silly ways to bypass huge chunks of a level and end up with tons of unused items in my inventory. Perhaps these are intended, perhaps these are the solutions that the developers planned for you to come up with. Perhaps there are solutions that are meant to trivialize the level and make it easier, but it just kind of feels like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be. To up the difficulty, I think some additional features would help. For instance, in level 41, they introduce a ring that you have to collect, and they say that it's going to increase the degree of difficulty in these levels. Well, cool, now I have to get a ring before I could get to the flag. That's going to make things a little bit more complicated. But after you see it in this level, you don't see it again until level 56. 15 levels later is the second time that the ring appears. But this should have been something that was in every level. It could have been, there are 3 stars scattered all over the map, and you could get to the flag, and that's relatively easy. But you have to figure out a clever way to move around the entire map and collect all 3 stars, and if you get all the stars from every level, you get a bonus. I don't know, this gives the levels some replayability, it gives them some additional challenge, and it makes the difficulty variable depending on your skill level. Although, to be fair to the game, there were some levels I liked. For instance, level 24 here, I was trying to go for a physics solution because I had just come from a heavy physics-based level, and I'm trying to get the marble to land on this launch pad, and then I realized, oh, my thinking about it is completely wrong, and I was able to solve it in a different way. That was fun. Or on this level, I was working on it for a really long time, and it was a challenging level. There were limited locations and limited tools, and it was hard to figure out where I could put things. There was a crane in the middle that actually made the level interesting and impacted where the marble could go in some sort of mind-bending ways. And so when I came up with the solution, it felt really satisfying because I had to work on it for a while. Or level 62 here is great. It was a complete misdirection. I was so focused on going the straightforward route up the middle, following the carpet, kind of, to the door, that I missed this think outside the level solution completely. And then it felt really clever to bounce outside of the map, it felt like, through this wall with electricity and come up with a way to move the teleporters around. It was really quite a bit of fun. We approached the flag from the side. It felt like we were doing something clever. And so I did like these levels, but I really wanted there to be more of them. And I think this brings us to the main rub that I have with 100 Ways, is right now in the Steam store, you could buy 100 Ways for about $10. There's a link to the Steam store below if you want to check this game out. But for me, this feels like the wrong context for the game. If this were a Flash game on, say, Congregate, and there were badges to go along with collecting those stars that I was talking about and completing levels in certain times, then it would be awesome. There would be a variety of levels, some of them easy, some of them harder, some that required a lot of thought, some that were just a little bit more fun, some where you had a lot of tools that you would use, some where you didn't have many at all, some that were more like puzzles, some that were more like platformers. Absolutely, this would be a 5-star Flash game. Or as a tablet game, it would be perfect for, you pick it up, you play a few levels, and then you come back and you play a few more. It would be awesome, several weeks of entertainment. But 100 Ways is trying to be a desktop game. If you look at the graphics, they're just by default at full screen, and there's not even an option to play it in a windowed mode. I was able to find a comment from a developer on the Steam community site to tell me to press Alt-Enter to go into windowed mode. And that was really helpful. I like that the developer is engaged in the community like that, but it's weird that that was sort of a hidden option. In addition, the resolution options just seem a little bit too big. I don't need to play this game in full screen 1080p. That seems excessive. So I think this game would have excelled as a free flash game or as a tablet game where you pay a couple of bucks. But at $10 on a desktop experience, you're gonna be expecting a little bit more. The game has 100 levels, it's 10 cents per level. Would I pay 10 cents for most of these levels? Would I pay $1 for a 10-pack? Especially considering that the first 10 levels were just a tutorial, one of which where you just hit the play button and it takes you right to the end. It just feels like not enough. The levels, most of them feel too simple to justify a full desktop game. So 100 Ways, even though I liked it, I had fun with it, and I want to finish it and experience all 100 puzzles, for me, I think would have been a better experience if it aimed lower, if it aimed just to be a flash game or a tablet game, and not try to give you the full desktop experience. And the $10 price point is for me a little bit high as well. I should note that at the time of recording, 100 Ways is on sale on the Steam store, so you could save a little bit of money there. So if you're interested in checking it out, maybe give it a go. It's a fun little puzzle game. You might enjoy it, but I would love to see an updated version of this game with just a little bit more complexity, a little bit more difficulty, and some items that you're able to control instead of just obstacles that control you. But thanks so much, everybody. I am Fruit Bats once again. This has been 100 Ways, and I'll see you next time.